You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
Going off the rails. Will rising transit crime derail ridership recoveries? Are people going to ride on the transit if they've got some more violence and maybe they're scared of the Rona and all kinds of other stuff going on? I don't know. We're going to have to find out. But before we get into it, thanks for being here. And if you are new, my name is Sean Reynolds. I own a couple of real estate companies. I'm a real estate guy that reads the news. So let's get on into it. Going off the rails. And this is an article written by a professor, retired professor, and also a trained police security person. All right. As riders start returning to buses and trains in cities across the United States, they are finding more crime and fewer police. Kind of sounds like Seattle. More crime, fewer police. And Seattle's not alone, right? I mean, there's just a bunch of other cities that same thing too. In New York City, between April and July, more than 400 transit workers were battered, spit on, or threatened. In March, arson in the subway killed a conductor, injured 16 passengers, and destroyed a subway car. The suspect, arrested in December for groping a female MTA employee, had numerous felony and misdemeanor convictions. Just prior to the arson, he had been confined to a psychiatric hospital. Also in March, a rider broke into a conductor's locked cab and attempted a sexual assault. In May, a woman broke into a conductor's cab and stabbed him. Another conductor was punched for asking a man not to ride between the cars because that's not safe. From June 28th to July 17th, assaults on the subway were up 30% year over year. And I wanted to read this because here in the Pacific Northwest, we don't really have mass transit. We just don't. It's not a thing. We don't have anything close enough together where we can actually ride a train anywhere. Where unlike in New York, I mean, that is just how you do it, right? And that's why I think there's been such an exodus from New York is that you're living in these massive buildings, high-rise buildings, super high-density buildings, and then you're forced to basically take transit everywhere. All of that is just kind of a no-go for the people who can't afford it to get out, right? That's why you think you've seen such an exodus from New York City, Manhattan. But here in the Pacific Northwest, we don't get exposed to that a lot. So I thought this was an important article for other people who are in, maybe a San Francisco or a New York to kind of consider something else, which is mass transit is a big way of life for a lot of people, just not here in Seattle, certainly not in Portland. Although we've got this light rail thing going on here in Bellevue in Seattle that's supposed to make it way better to be able to get to the airport and go see your concerts in downtown. But by the time they get that bad boy done, I will be ready. I will be retired. I mean, I will be like in my 60s, more than likely, right? I mean, it's one of those projects that's like, yeah, I hope that gets done before I'm dead. So that's part of one of the reasons is this is something outside of, it's outside of my experience, daily experience, but there's a lot of people in the world that are dependent upon mass transit to get to work, get to wherever, do their thing. And in cities like New York and in cities like Seattle, even though we don't have mass transit, you've got less police and more crime going on. And that's specific to a lot of these areas where your mass transit is prevalent, right? Employees were not the only victims in New York City. By late October, 6 male passengers had been murdered and 5 women raped. Each category exceeded in 2019 totals. Transit patrons have been punched, slashed, and pushed from platforms onto the electrified tracks by apparently homeless and mentally ill persons. And that's what I talk about a lot here in the Seattle Real Estate Podcast, is that, all right, it's not a crime to be homeless. It's not a crime to be mentally ill. But when you let those folks run around, they tend to cause some problems. Here's what we're talking about, right? The MTA reported an increase in people wandering on the tracks, endangering themselves and causing delays for the few riders who have returned to the system. Man, it just makes you want to go out and take a rapid transit anywhere, doesn't it? No, it just sounds horrible. Here in Seattle, we depend on our cars. We are just known for not taking the transit, mainly because our transit sucks. A bus system here, absolutely horrible. I mean, in my opinion, just like when I look at the schedule, I'm like, yeah, I don't have that kind of time to waste getting from point A to point B, even if it's on my day off when I'm going to a game, back when games were available to go see. I'm like, somebody's got to really work on me. Let's take the bus. Somebody's got to really, because I'm lazy and I want to just sit there and tee up Uber on my phone and pay for it and get me there. But that is, I guess, that's my white privilege, isn't it? I mean, it's just showing through. Okay, this is what I want to do. I can afford it. I'm going to go do that. Should I take the bus? Yes, probably from an eco standpoint, but I am not there yet. I'm going to take an Uber. And I think that Uber is very progressive at age 52 because a lot of people are like, that whole Uber thing. I don't know about that. That's weird. No, I think it's cool. I think it's great that you can tee up an Uber in 5 minutes, have it there. Boom, you're going. Don't have to drive. The reappearance of graffiti and the more than $400,000 required to repair smashed subway car doors and windows are proving that broken windows, and that's in quotes, aside from their implications for public order, are a costly and dangerous problem. And the reason that broken windows is quoted there is because that was kind of a really big thing in getting New York City back on its feet, getting some of the crime taken care of, getting the graffiti taken care of, getting, misdemeanor crime taken care of. And so the broken windows reference is in relation to take care of those broken windows, stop all crime, get the broken windows fixed, make sure you drop the hammer on those people who do that, and the rest will kind of follow. But if you allow the broken windows to go, all kinds of other stuff is going to happen. And that's what we're seeing in Seattle. That's what we're seeing in Portland. A lot of crimes that normally would get, taken care of, or the police would actually arrest somebody, not happening now because we're just letting broken windows go. Just, it's okay. Nobody really needed that window. You didn't have to really even see out that window. Just bang all the glass out of it. It'll be okay. It's open. It's an open building. What can happen? You burn up and, burn up the adjoining buildings next to it. That's not a big deal. Let's just let that happen. Yet the nearly 1,000 New York City police officers who helped remove homeless riders to enable overnight cleaning and disinfecting last year, they are gone. And New York Police Department's 85-member homeless outreach unit has also been disbanded. No problem, says City Council member Stephen Levin, he's from Brooklyn, and Helen Rosenthal from Manhattan, who introduced a bill prohibiting the New York Police Department from conducting homeless outreach. As Levin said in support of the bill, experiencing homelessness on the street or on the subway is not a crime. That is very true. But the homeless tend to commit a lot of crimes, and you got to deal with it somehow. And getting rid of these programs, not probably the solution I would look at. Let's see, this is going the wrong direction. So do we need more police or less police? I mean, I don't know. Let me think about that for a little bit. I'll get back to you, okay? Homeless encampments in stations and on buses and trains will defeat the purpose of hundreds of millions of dollars spent on hygiene measures to allay riders' concerns about COVID-19. Meantime, Manhattan District Attorney Cy Vance hasn't prosecuted fare beaters since 2017, people who don't pay for their fares getting on mass transit. And Brooklyn's East Eric Gonzalez favors pretrial diversion programs for suspects arrested for minor offenses. Cleaning will not bring back riders afraid of being thrown in front of a moving train. That's a bold statement, but I got to say, I'm going to go with that. I'm going to stand behind that and agree. Cleaning will not bring back riders afraid of being thrown in front of a moving train. Yep, agreed. Agreed, author. Good call. Saying that it needs at least $4 billion in federal funds, the MTA announced a partnership with the Department of Homeland Security and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. I don't know, why is Massachusetts so hard to say? So many consonants? Yeah. To study ways to reduce the spread of COVID-19 on transit, the MTA should consider partnering with the New York Police Department to restore lost officers. Even better, it should assign many of its more than 600 police officers to patrol the subways, rather than continue to deploy them on commuter rail lines, where ridership is down almost 80%. 80%. People just aren't taking mass transit. New York is not alone. Los Angeles, Seattle, and Minneapolis are among the cities cutting back on transit policing. often in favor of civilian ambassadors or outreach workers. You gotta love that. While we reimagine and we rethink this issue, we're going to send out some civilian ambassadors or an outreach worker and just kind of see how that goes. Bring a couple of those people back in body bags, and you're going to reimagine and rethink that policy once again. The Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Agency, God, just another long title. Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Agency, shifting police funds to homeless outreach, will dispatch social work or mental health personnel to homeless and substance abuse calls and will hire unarmed ambassadors to work in its stations. Good luck with that. 3 years ago, after 2/3 of female riders, 0.66 of female riders, they requested more police. This is women, right? They wanted more police. They feel safer. And with violent crime contributing to ridership losses, the agency signed a $645.7 million 5-year contract with the Los Angeles Police Department, the County Sheriff's Department, and the Long Beach Police Department to patrol its buses and trains. Funds for policing are very likely to be cut in 2022 because we've just gone the other direction. That whole thing about feeling safe, and we know everybody wants more coverage, they want more policing, that's just not politically where it's at right now. So we're going to go the other way. We're just going to defund whatever police we have, just going to reimagine, rethink, and send out some civilians. Hope this works out. I mean, on paper, this looks like a genius plan. Yeah, we're not so based in reality, but we're going to have to just face that reality when we get there. This is a social experiment in the works that we're doing here. And sometimes social experiments work out. Sometimes they don't. We're just going to have to see on this one. Just bear with us all, and we're going to ride this one out. Policies of newly elected District Attorney George Gascon, who has vowed to end arrests for crimes like trespassing, disturbing the peace, and public intoxication, have also compromised public safety. That's exactly what we're doing here in Seattle. We're basically decriminalizing about 100 misdemeanors. If you can prove poverty, you're okay. You're all right. So what we're doing here in Seattle is we're trying to pinpoint a lot of these crimes as people being in need. They need food. Well, they're not stealing food. They are stealing other stuff that they can sell to get their next fix. That's what they're doing. They are addicted to drugs. So nobody wants to go down that road because then, we'd actually have to do something. We got to come up with a plan. We need to reimagine and rethink our whole game plan for all this stuff. We're not good at that. We just like to do things like defund the police, and we'll just see how that goes. Sound Transit, the provider for Seattle and Tacoma, relies on King County Sheriff's deputies, fair enforcement officers, and ambassadors for policing. After a spate of violent crimes committed against light rail passengers in 2019, riders thought more police were necessary. See, whenever it comes down to it, people always think more police is necessary. Not less, more. But then at some point in time, it becomes politically just not in favor. Police, we no longer say thank you to the police. We say terrible things to them, and we threaten to defund them. That's what we do. But then when worse comes to worse and we're really in a pinch, when we're really in a bind, what do? We get out our cell phone and we punch in 911. Good Lord. I hope the police show up soon. I don't want to get beheaded. I want the police to show. That's what's going on, right? After a spate of violent crimes committed against light rail passengers in 2019, riders thought more police were necessary. The agency disagreed. Interesting. This year, given COVID-19 related ridership losses of about 85%, basically all transit riders in Sound Transit, they aren't riding the Sound Transit. The Sound Transit will replace its fare enforcement officers with additional ambassadors. Ambassadors of what? Are these ambassadors of goodwill, of peace, of hope, of ridership, of toll paying? I don't know. Just when you put out the word ambassador, I just immediately go to, that's a nonsense position. I don't think so. I don't know. But again, I am a real estate guy, and so I don't really know what's going on with a lot of these things. But ambassador, it's like the de-escalation ambassador Seattle has. Yeah, it's going pretty well, right? 2 thumbs up. The additional ambassadors will issue warnings rather than citations. Hey, what are you doing? Giving you a warning. All right, whatever, Mr. Ambassador of Public Safety on the mass transit. I mean, who's going to listen to that? If you're homeless or if you're on drugs or if you're mentally ill, you don't give a rip. However, a poverty defense law currently under review could derail even this weak attempt at maintaining order. That's all Seattle stuff, right? It's funny how these national issues, they're always able to tie in something from Seattle. Let's grab that little thing from Seattle because, man, those guys are they're off the rails as well. I mean, what are they doing? What a bunch of nut jobs in Seattle. Wouldn't want to live there. Oh. Minneapolis-St. Paul's Metro Transit has for years wrestled with high crime and high fare evasion on its bus and light rail system. It's one thing to have really good light rail or bus system. It's another thing to get people to pay. Prosecutors not wanting to prosecute has meant that only about 3% of fare evaders pay fines. Transit police reported that in 2019, violent crime, including rape, robbery, and aggravated assault had increased 35% over 2019 or 2018. So these crimes are going up. I mean, they're just going up, right? I mean, there's no way to really kind of get around that. And yet we're doing the same thing. We're going to send out social workers on some of these calls. We're going to send out ambassadors. We are going to reduce the number of police, and we're just going to, this is a social experiment. God, I hope it works. If it doesn't, those people that are dead and or raped or maimed or whatever, yeah, they're just part of the experiment. And we're going to have to get back to them and tell them that we're going to do better next time. Train operators in the Twin Cities have briefed lawmakers about encountering drunks, drug users, needles, and half-naked people. Despite this, Metro Transit has decided to deploy unarmed ambassadors to check fares, connect homeless or mentally ill riders with services, and clamp down on smoking and drinking. With more than 150 Minneapolis Police Department officers retiring or resigning after this summer's protests, transit police already stretched thin may be assigned to patrol units. And you're just not going to have anybody do in the mass transit, right? So it's interesting that Minneapolis Police Department, 150 are retiring or resigning. Seattle is going to be over 200. I mean, just some big numbers of cops that are like, yeah, this whole defunding thing, it's not so much for me. I'm going to go to a police department where I am appreciated, and when people call 911, I actually want to go out and help them. So agencies in 2 localities, however, are reversing the defund and decriminalize trend. The Chicago Transit Authority added about 50 officers to its 150-member Chicago Police Department transit unit after crime doubled this year. That's the social experiment I'm talking about. So if you can identify numbers of, well, crime is up in your department 50%, that's a pretty good indicator. You need some more help. You need to deal with whatever underlying issues you have and get a going. Because up 50%, other stats, those are good. Number of home sales, great. Appreciation, up 50%, awesome. But not crime up 50%. That's a no-go. That's a bad social experiment right there. The unit commander noted that though ridership is down as much as 85%, the people that are driving the crime rate up never left the system. They're still there. They're staying there. They're diehard. They're hardcore. They're going to be there, and they're going to be monkeying up the system, is what we're saying. In California, the Orange County Transportation Authority overrode external demands to hire additional mental health care workers and to decriminalize fare evasion. Instead, the board increased funding for police. That's kind of what I've been saying all along. This is what you need to do. And for this stuff, I mean, increase the funding for the police. That's kind of a no-brainer. If you feel that there are police within your department that don't have the right attitude, that need to relearn some things, that's fine. Get them some more training. Again, you need to increase funding for police. Transit executives owe it to their riders and employees to be vocal in convincing politicians and prosecutors that fewer transit police will mean more crime, fewer riders, and more fiscal stress. Crime-plagued transit systems hurt any city's economy. which will disproportionately harm those who rely on public transit to reach jobs, schools, grocery stores, and medical facilities. So that's this author's wrap up. And Dorothy Moses Schultz, a PhD, is an emerita professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice at City University of New York, and a retired MTA Metro North Railroad police captain who has served as a safety and security consultant to transit agencies across the country. She's the one that wrote this. And the way that she kind of wrapped this up is this is going to disproportionately harm those who rely on public transit to reach jobs, schools, grocery stores, and medical facilities. The same way that I tie that into is the communities. When you defund the police and you have less police running throughout the community, guess who's going to be impacted the most? And we've talked about this probably over 100 times. It is the communities of color. They've got higher rates of crime, just do. And you're going to have more crime in those areas because the people that commit crime are going to recognize there's nobody really doing much to prevent me from doing my criming, getting my next fix, whatever it is. Therefore, you're going to have more crime in the lower end neighborhoods where you've already got crime higher just in the normal course of events, just because of the sociological makeup of that population. You're going to have more crime. So the people that this is going to hurt the most, defunding the police, I believe, are communities where a lot of communities of color. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I am, but I don't think I will be. And here, it's going to disproportionately harm people taking mass transit are people in those same neighborhoods, right? Because if you can drive your car to work and if you can afford it, you're probably going to go that route, except in maybe New York, where it's just such a pain in the ass to get around, right? I mean, you have a car probably in a garage somewhere, but you don't take it out very often because it's really hard to get around. It's like driving around in downtown in any major city. It's just a pain in the rear. There's so much traffic. It freaks you out so bad because there's so many people walking around. And now you've got a bunch of zombies running around downtown. And this is a total thing. Big urban centers, you got zombies. Those are people just whacked out on drugs. They don't even know where they are. And they are literally walking down the middle of the street. They have no concept of where they are, what's going on, where they should be, or that an oncoming, truck that doesn't see them is going to kill them. That's just what's going on in big cities right now. So I agree with the crime-plagued transit system is hurt by any city's economy. You're defunding mass transit police and you're putting in some ambassadors. This is not going the right direction. But we'll see how it goes because, social experiment will either pass or it will fail. Either way, I will bring you the results right here on the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. Unfortunately, for all those people that are going to have to be impacted negatively by this kind of stuff, man, it's a tough go. Because I think a lot of people are like, wait, don't defund the police. Don't defund the police. Oh, you did? Damn it. Okay, I guess we'll just have to kind of see how this goes. We'll have to ride this one out just like we've ridden everything else out. And in the nicer neighborhoods, yeah, they've still got all their cops. What's up with that? They kept all their cops. They added to cops. They took cops from our Seattle metropolitan and they added them elsewhere. What's up with that? People have different ideas of what the right thing to do is right now. I don't know. To me, it's pretty clear. The author of this article, it was pretty darn clear. It's pretty convincing how, when you defund police, you get rid of police, crime goes up. It doesn't go down. It doesn't miraculously go, oh, there's no police here. We should not do some of that criming. Let's just take a break today. We'll come back to it when there's some more police in the area. And let's call it a day. Let's just, leave people with their current property and not steal it from them. No, that never happens, right? It just doesn't happen. We're not going in that direction. I don't know. Wild times out there, right? Either which way, I'll report them to you right here on the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. All right. Thanks for being with me. Thanks for all that stuff. I'm going to end this one. Thanks, guys. We'll catch up in the next one. Bye for now. forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you'll know when our next video is out.